The House will come to order. Members, please take your seats. Sergeant at Arms.
The House is now in session. All persons not entitled to privileges on the floor, please retire to the gallery.
The members will rise and be led in prayer by the Reverend Dr. Keith A. Savage, Senior Servant of the First Baptist Church, Manassas, and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, led by the gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we invite your holy presence and direction. We are best when we avoid the advice of the wicked, the path that leads to sin, or place ourselves in positions to become pessimists. Hear this prayer and usher in these House delegates to rise to greater levels of love for our neighbor, our community, and Commonwealth. Today, let them think and communicate a common theme of hope and remedy under the banner of progress for all. Let those lead those who will offer advice and make decisions in this chamber to do so for the betterment of all citizens of this great Commonwealth. Let their words and deeds exemplify and give hope for the present, hope rooted in the heritage of human dignity for which we are indebted to live for the future. If you will grant this, we will witness a dawning of legislation, proposed and passed, that will refuse to reflect a war of separation, but showcase a common welfare of caring. Voice and vote will echo the recognition of one another as neighbor and not villain. Forbid us to be divided in profitless partisanship, but guided anew by the moral compass of a commonwealth and common welfare. I offer this prayer to you, Almighty God. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The members will answer the roll call by indicating their presence on the electronic voting board. Somebody tell Delegate Bell to push his green button. Clerk will close the roll.
Mr. Speaker, a quorum is present.
Pursuant to House Rule 3, I've examined and approved the Journal of the House of Delegates for February 19th, 2016. Motions and resolutions under Rule 39 are now in order. Does the clerk have any announcements or communications?
Just several reminders, Mr. Speaker, all regarding the budget. You'll recall yesterday the committee Appropriations Committee released its amendments to the budget bills. They will be available on your desk tomorrow by this time tomorrow, they'll be loaded into IHOD, LIS, as well. Appropriations staff tomorrow is going to have the budget overview tomorrow afternoon, 15 minutes after adjournment. Most importantly, pursuant to House Rule 73, I'd remind the body the Speaker has invoked House Rule 73, which means that anyone who wants to offer amendments to the budget needs to have those amendments submitted to the front desk by this coming Wednesday, February 24th at 12 noon. Objections deadline is the following day when we take up the budget on Thursday. All this information is outlined in a communication I sent to everyone on Friday. Please announce as I have, sir.
The gentleman from Scott, Mr. Kilgore.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for an introduction.
Gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, today we have with us a group of high school students from the 1st Legislative District. They're here talking to leaders like yourself, Mr. Speaker, learning about the legislative process. Hope they'll rise and give them a warm House welcome. Thank you.
Glad to see the visitors from the 1st Legislative District Leadership Commission. We thank you very much for taking the time to visit with us today. The gentleman from Henrico, Mr. Bagby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for an introduction.
The gentleman has the floor.
Thank you. In the gallery today, we have a group of students from Newbridge Academy in Sandston, Virginia, if they would stand. the students from New Bridge Academy was founded in 2004, and it's a ministry of New Bridge Baptist Church. It has students from kindergarten through 12. These students have come to tour and observe their government in action, and I would ask the House to give them a warm welcome.
We're delighted to have the students from New Bridge with us today. Thank you for taking the time to come to your capital. The gentleman from Virginia Beach, Mr. Stolle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for a request.
Gentleman, may you state it.
On page 5 of the calendar, can Senate Bill 212 go by for the day?
Without objection, Senate Bill 212 by for the day. The gentleman from Manassas, Mr. Miller.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for an introduction.
Gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, this morning, giving us our prayer, we had the Reverend Keith A. Savage, who was called as the 12th and current pastor of the First Baptist Church. Pastor Savage instituted the church's vision of moving the kingdom forward through faith, and he established the church logo. First Baptist continues to develop and promote thriving ministries and outreach services locally, nationally, as well as internationally. Each year, scores of individuals join the First Baptist Church located in Old Town Manassas. Mr. Speaker, as a neighbor of my real estate company, I can tell you First Baptist Church is just a wonderful neighbor, and he is a fantastic pastor. We're glad to have him here, and I hope the House will give Pastor Savage a warm house welcome.
The gentleman from Frederick, Mr. Collins.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for an introduction.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the gallery today, ladies and gentlemen, we have Miss Janice Thomas. She is visiting with us. She is the 2015 Miss Virginia Senior America winner, and she resides in Winchester, Virginia. Now, looking around the room, I don't see anybody in here that qualifies, so let's give her all of our attention. Ms. Thomas has been an educator for over 36 years, and she prides herself in helping students learn academically, socially, and emotionally. She's creator of some board games for education, and she believes firmly that when you help others, your own world becomes brighter and more productive. Her motto is each day brings another opportunity to be great. So let's all give Ms. Janice Thomas, Miss Virginia Senior America 2015, a warm house welcome.
We're delighted to have Miss Virginia with us today. We thank you very much. The gentlewoman from Norfolk, Miss Hester.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for an introduction.
Gentlewoman has the floor.
Thank you. It is my privilege today to introduce Girl Scouts from several of our state's Girl Scout councils. Girl Scouts is deeply rooted in our American experience. The organization began over 104 years ago with one woman, founder Juliette Gordon Lowe. She believed in the power of every girl and organized the first Girl Scout troop on March 12, 1912 in Savannah, Georgia. Her vision was to help girls discover their strengths, passions, and talents. And her legacy continues with the present movement's mission to build girls of courage, confidence, and character, who will make the world a better place. Today, there are more than 2.5 million girls involved in Girl Scouts nationally, with nearly 100,000 of them here in Virginia. The Girl Scout experience is brought to girls through the dedication, time, and talent of more than 40,000 adult volunteers of different backgrounds, abilities, and expertise. With their guidance, Girl Scouts are developing a solid foundation in leadership through core programs around science, technology, engineering, and math, as well as healthy living, financial literacy, and citizenship. This year, Girl Scouts are celebrating 100 years of girls earning the highest award a girl may earn in Girl Scouts, the Gold Award. This award inspires girls to find the greatness inside themselves and share their ideas and passions with their communities through sustainable Take Action projects. At this time, I invite all Girl Scouts who have earned or are in the process of earning the highest award in Girl Scouts to please stand. Applaud and congratulate them, and I'd like all Girl Scouts and all of their supporters and sponsors and volunteers to stand. Thank you.
We're very pleased to have the Scouts with us today and all the volunteers that help make their work so possible. Thank you for being with us today. The gentleman from Suffolk, Mr. Morris.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for a point of personal privilege and a motion.
The gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, in March 24th, 1928, Mr. Fred Van Cherry was born in Suffolk, Virginia, into a poor farming family. He attended racially segregated public schools, lived in an age of Jim Crow laws, and faced discrimination and socioeconomic hardships. In 1951, Mr. Cherry graduated from the Virginia Union University, and he enlisted in the Aviation Cadet Training Program for the U.S. Air Force. Received his flying pilot's wings in 1952. He was soon serving in the Korean War. He flew F-84 Thunderjets on more than 50 combat missions, and he continued to serve in the Air Force. In 1961, he deployed to Vietnam, and as a fighter pilot, flew 51 combat missions. In October 1961, on his 52nd combat mission, he was shot down. Flying 400 feet at 600 miles per hour, he ejected. He broke his left ankle, his left wrist, shattered his left shoulder. He was captured upon hitting the ground. He was the first African-American captured in Vietnam and its highest ranking officer to be incarcerated. The Viet Cong tried to use Mr. Cherry to further divide and inflame the racial divisiveness in our military. They made it clear that he could reduce his torture, reduce the harsh punishment, and he could vastly improve his living conditions. All he had to do was speak against America and speak against the racial injustice and discrimination, but he refused. He was in captive for almost 7 years. But the Viet Cong tried another tactic on Lieutenant Cherry. They put him in a cellmate with a self-described a Southern white boy as his cellmate, hoping the racial antipathy would inflame him to make remarks against America, but it failed. He served with Ensign Halliburton, and they were together for almost 2 years, and they became lifelong friends. Mr. Cherry spent 702 days in solitary confinement, with over 2,671 days in captivity until he was freed February 12, 1973. After his release, he continued to serve in the Air Force, serving at the National War College and the Defense Intelligence School, and retired in 1981 with over 30 years of service. He was also awarded over 30 medals and decorations, including the Air Force Cross, the Silver Star, Legion of Merit, 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor, 2 Purple Hearts. Lieutenant Colonel Cherry was quoted as saying, "I was thankful for my Christian upbringing and the values which I had been taught by my family, elders, and teachers. When all hope seemed to fade and creep away, my faith would grasp in fading hope, and I reel it back within my reach. Within sound values deeply embedded in me, my performance as an American fighting man in the hands of the enemy would have been miserable, and so would my ability to face myself in the mirror today." In 1981, with over 30 years of service, Colonel Cherry retired. Mr. Speaker, I have a motion. On February 16, 2016, Lieutenant Colonel Cherry passed away. And I move that when we adjourn today, we do so in the honor and memory of Colonel Fred Van Cherry.
The gentleman from Suffolk, Mr. Morris, moves that when the House adjourn today, it adjourn in the honor and the memory of Colonel Fred Van Cherry. As many as favor that motion will please rise. That motion is agreed to. The gentleman from Prince William, Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for an introduction.
You may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, here on Capitol Square today, there's a group of Prince William County students from various schools, some 80 strong, that are here for a civics engagement program called Our Community, Our Time. During this year-long civics program in Prince William County schools, they're going to identify various problems they'd like to see addressed legislatively, come up with solutions, and fair warning to my Prince William colleagues, you can probably expect to hear from them. So I would ask that you please give a warm house welcome to the students here from our community, our time. Thank you.
We're delighted to have the students with us today and encourage you in your efforts to help us to find solutions to the problems that are out there. Gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Plum.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the House, as part of our celebration of Black History Month, it's my honor to share with you the life story of Taylor Williams, who was a former colleague of mine in Fairfax County Public Schools, and he was a former neighbor and constituent. But in order to appreciate Taylor Williams' life, it's important to create some historic context. Some are surprised to learn, and others tend to forget, that the Virginia Constitution of 1902 prohibited black and white students to attend the same school. It stated, and it's kind of amazing to realize today, that we would, in the Constitution, Section 120 of the Constitution, state, white and colored children shall not be taught in the same school, period. While many think that Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 ended segregated schools in the Commonwealth, it took another decade to integrate the schools in Virginia. During that decade, there were endless legislative maneuvers, gubernatorial actions, more than 40 lawsuits, and a campaign of massive resistance to keep from desegregating the schools. Now, Taylor Williams grew up in a segregated society. He was adopted by the first dean of Tuskegee Institute College Division, from which he graduated in 1940. Taylor joined the Fairfax County school system in 1950 as a teacher and part-time principal at James Lee Elementary School, one of the schools for blacks in Fairfax County. Fairfax had several elementary schools for black students in the major black communities in the county. James Lee School, as I mentioned, was near Falls Church. Lillian Carey Elementary was in the Bailey's Crossroads area, Louise Archer in Vienna, and there were others. As black schools in the South went, these schools were brick and considered modern for their time. Now, I have no information on how they were staffed and equipped. But what I want you to note is that when I listed these schools, I mentioned that they were all elementary schools. Fairfax County students who wanted to go on to high school or to go to trade school had to go about 25 miles out of the county, either to Manassas to a regional school or into the District of Columbia. In 1954, Taylor Williams was named principal of the first black school in Fairfax County, the first black high school. That was Luther Jackson High School. In 1964, when the schools in Fairfax County were integrated, Luther Jackson became an integrated intermediate school where Taylor Williams remained principal until 1970, when he became principal of Madison High School in Vienna. He was the first black principal in the intermediate school and the first black principal of a high school in Fairfax County. Now, when Fairfax County, with a student population of about 120,000 students, decentralized its administration into 4 administrative areas in 1971, Taylor Williams was selected as superintendent for Area 1. That's recognized in the county as being the most challenging area for student achievement. But the rise of Taylor Williams through the ranks of school administration demonstrated the high esteem and the admiration with which he was held by the school board, by the administration, and by parents. When the warning signals of "here comes the principal" was sounded in many schools, students would scatter in different directions. But with Taylor Williams, students would flock around him to enjoy his calm manner, his sense of humor, and his wisdom, but with strict discipline. Taylor Williams was a key figure in integrating the public schools in Fairfax County, and he was one of the earliest residents of Reston, the first community in Virginia fully open to racial integration. Ebony magazine in about 1965 featured a photo and a story about Reston of Taylor Williams and his wife sitting on the deck of their then town home in Reston, a deck that they shared with a white family. I am honored to have known Taylor Williams. I know that thousands of young people's lives and the quality of life in our community are better because of him. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Loudoun, Mr. Greason.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for an announcement.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the second to last announcement I'm going to make about the basketball game. I know you're surprised to hear me talking about it again, but I will tell you the Senate is up their game significantly. They have 2 NBA players playing this year. And I assume you guys know what that means. We again will beat the Senate members. We will probably lose against the NBA players. And in the end, I will parse my words to figure out how I announce on Wednesday that we won the game. In some way, I will say those words somehow. But more importantly, we still have a long way to go to match their donations to the Massey Cancer Center. Many of you have come by my desk or my office. I'm looking at several of you right now, and I really appreciate your efforts in raising money. The last thing we want is to lose in the race to raise funds against the Senate for the Massey Cancer Center, because I'm convinced our House pages will crush the Senate pages. And you can tell my daughter I said that. Thank
you. The gentleman from Augusta, Mr. Landis.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for the purpose of a point of personal privilege.
Gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the House, as most of you know, yesterday the House Appropriations Committee adopted a House budget with a vote of 21-0. And I want to thank the chairman of our committee, Delegate Jones, and all of our subcommittee chairmen, and also all of our colleagues on both sides of the aisle on the Appropriations Committee for all their hard work in these last few weeks in putting our version or our amendments, rather, to the governor's proposed budget in the vote yesterday. Also, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank our staff. They have worked diligently over those weeks to assist us and to provide information and help for us as we went through that process. Chairman Jones has commented a number of times related to our House budget and the ramp up to our adoption of it on Sunday, and I agree with him totally. It is a conservative, responsible and structurally sound and balanced budget. It doesn't include any tax or fee increases, which I think is very important. It deposits $605 million in our rainy day fund. It fully funds the annual contribution to the Virginia retirement system, which all of our employees appreciate, and it pays back the payments we deferred from the VRS in 2010, and Chairman Jones and I remember when that was something we had to do at that time, but now we're making that payment and making good on the promise to make that payment. It also makes responsible investments, over $70 million more than the governor proposed in his budget for K through 12. And I've heard from my colleagues on this side of the aisle that that is something that they very much support and appreciate. It includes $272 million in lottery proceeds distribution, which will provide flexibility and I think is welcome news to our schools so that they will have that flexibility and they will have fewer strings attached to the funding that they will receive. It also, Mr. Speaker, makes targeted investments in economic development, and it emphasizes accountability and oversight for those investments that we're going to make related to economic development. Now, Mr. Speaker, many other members will highlight other specific parts of the budget, but I want to talk about health care and what we accomplished related to health care in the House budget. When we talk to our constituents, health care is an issue that's on their minds, obviously is important to them, and something they want us to continue to be on the look for and to make improvements on. This year, we passed a number of reforms in the House of Delegates that help address health care and access to affordable health care and controlling those costs. We've had discussions and ongoing discussions with COPN reform. We've adopted legislation that I carried dealing with direct primary care, which we think will improve access for our citizens. Delegate Stolle had legislation on associate physicians that will help veterans and other, with medical experience hopefully get good health care related jobs. Now, Medicaid is something that we'll agree to disagree on for some of us, but the House budget does not include Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Care Act, and that's something we've made clear. We've been steadfast in that position, and the House budget reflects that. Now's not the time to expand what I think many of us believe is a broken system and leave our taxpayers on the hook for a bill, and we don't believe that doing so would be the answer. Other states are having difficulties related to their Medicaid expansion. In fact, the Associated Press reported last year that more than a dozen states that expanded Medicaid have seen enrollment surge well beyond their original projections, and obviously that's led to higher costs. In Michigan, it's estimated that costs have shot up by 50% because of soaring enrollment in their Medicaid expansion program. Ohio's projected costs have more than doubled. Now, I think all of us would agree that Virginia did not follow that same path, and I think that wisdom is borne out for us because we've not seen any of those types of impacts on our budget. We also, at the same time, in addition to opposing Medicaid expansion, do believe that the health safety net is important, and we need to strengthen and improve that, and the House budget reflects that. We believe in taking care of our neighbors, but instead of expanding government and raising taxes, as the provider tax would have done, the House has proposed a number of measures to strengthen our health safety net. The House budget invests $28.9 million in new funding to build a stronger safety net for our citizens. It builds on the previous efforts by the House to provide services for individuals with serious mental illnesses and substance abuse disorder. It expands targeted behavioral health and substance abuse treatment services to individuals with serious mental illnesses. It expands Medicaid substance abuse treatment to provide a comprehensive array of treatment services, and it builds on a provider capacity to be able to provide those services. It also expands funding for community health services, behavioral health services. It adds, and this is something that Delegate Cox and I are fond of, and I know a number of members are, it adds new individual and family support waiver slots to address the critical waiting list that we have for our citizens who are waiting for those services. It also creates 2 new PAC teams, and that's something that we've had bipartisan support on and believe are important. It increases eligibility for our GAP program to 80% of the federal poverty level from the 60% that we adopted last year. It provides funding for one-time expenses for development of community housing options with specialized services and capital improvements to transition individuals from training centers or those who actually lack other housing options. And for those in the Roanoke region and Southwest, it keeps Catawba Hospital open until a delayed plan on how we're going to approach our mental health system across the state is put in place. It also convenes a work group of agencies across the secretariats to examine the current costs and protocols for purchasing high-cost medications and make recommendations to improve the cost effectiveness of purchasing those medications. All great reforms and I think great issues. It also, Mr. Speaker, adds language to implement a number of JLARC recommendations related to Medicaid eligibility and that process. That was something that JLARC worked on diligently, and as you all may remember, was a resolution this House and the Senate adopted to look at our Medicaid program. Now, Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the House, all those things I think are things that both sides of the aisle can support as part of our House budget, and I hope the members on both sides will support our budget on Thursday. In closing, Mr. Speaker, let me just say that the budget proposals that I've mentioned here shows that we're serious about health care in Virginia, and we're serious about taking care of our neighbors. They're the people we represent. The proposals also, I think, show that we can do this in a fiscally responsible manner without breaking the bank, and more importantly, without leaving the bill for taxpayers in the future, or to make it difficult for them to have their hard-earned dollars that they want. Mr. Speaker, I really hope that with this related to health care and with the budget, that I hope my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will join us on this side of the aisle in supporting these measures so that we can strengthen our health care system and adopt a House budget on Thursday. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Washington, Mr. O'Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for the purpose of an introduction.
Gentleman may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Join us in the gallery. Today we have students from Galax Middle School. I would ask that they please stand. They're here today. They met with several members of our Southwest delegation this morning. They have toured Capitol grounds and now have a chance to see session here at the Capitol. And so I would ask that you join me in giving them a warm house welcome.
We're delighted to have the students with us today and hope you enjoy your time in the Capitol. The gentlewoman from Richmond City, Ms. McQuinn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for the purpose of an announcement. I'm sorry.
Has the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Senator Ruff and my colleagues, Senator Ruff and myself cordially invite you to the Cancer Caucus legislative reception from 9:30 to 11 a.m. in 4 West Conference Room. We're inviting you to come and hear a special presentation on advancing cancer cures and saving lives through progressive medicines and technology. So far, the confirmed speakers are Dr. Gordon D. Ginter, MD, Director of Massey Cancer Center, Dr. Robert Dreiser, MD of Emily Corrick Clinical Cancer Center, and Brian Pollock, the CEO of Neoantigenics, discovered at the University of Virginia a more progressive way of addressing the whole issue of cancer. So again, we invite you to come and share with us. Last year, we had about 19 senators and delegates to come and hear from them. Hopefully, we'll have just as many on, again, on Wednesday in 4 West. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The gentleman from Prince William, Mr. Langenfelder.
Mr. Speaker, rise for an introduction.
Gentleman may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I believe that we're joined this morning, I hope in the gallery, if not maybe in one of the rooms in the Capitol, by the middle school kids from Bevel Middle School in my district. And I would like to welcome them. They are down here learning about our Capitol, and so let's tell them that we appreciate them if they'd stand up. Thank you.
Delighted to have the students from Bethel Middle School with us today, wherever they might be. The gentleman from Giles, Mr. Yost.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for a motion.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move that Senate Bill 600 on page 12 of the calendar go by for the day.
Without objection, Senate Bill 600 by for the day. The gentlewoman from Fairfax, Ms. Fillercorn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to request a unanimous consent to introduce a joint resolution past the deadline.
Would the gentlewoman care to share with us what it's about?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen. This resolution would designate 2016 as the year in Shakespeare in Virginia. This year marks the 400th anniversary of the death of William Shakespeare, one of the most influential and widely known poets and playwrights of all time. And as the Arts Caucus Chair and House of Delegates, it's my hope that we can encourage Virginians across the Commonwealth to learn more about and to enjoy William Shakespeare's work.
Thank you. The gentlewoman from Fairfax, Ms. Fillercorn, asks for unanimous consent to introduce a resolution after the filing date. And so the question will be, should we grant to be or not to be the adoption of the resolution? That wasn't my idea. Matt Moran thought that up. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion's agreed to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Motion's agreed to. The gentleman from Culpeper, Mr. Freitas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for the purpose of an introduction.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are joined in the gallery today by the Future Farmers Association organization from Culpeper, from the Eastern View High School in Culpeper. We have 5 students with us today. 4 of them are actually going to be continuing on to college, all in good Virginia schools, and all seeking majors within agriculture. So they're going to be continuing on that proud agricultural tradition within Virginia. They are also accompanied by their teacher, Catherine Reams, who is the CTE Teacher of the Year in Virginia. So I hope it'll be the pleasure to offer a warm house welcome to them.
Delighted to have students with us today. The gentleman from Portsmouth, Mr. Herrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for an introduction.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, sir. In the gallery today is a young man who has been my privilege to see grow over the years, Graham Fitzwater. Graham is a 6th grader at Norfolk Collegiate School. Stand, Graham, if you will. I was pleased, Mr. Speaker, to serve with his mother, who passed, unfortunately, prematurely a few years ago. She was a distinguished member of both the Portsmouth Commonwealth Attorney's Office and the United States Attorney's Office in Norfolk. With Graham today is his grandfather, a good friend and a community leader in Portsmouth, Mr. Charles Bartlett. And I would note, Mr. Speaker, that Graham has expressed a desire to join us next year as a page. So hopefully we'll be hearing a little bit more from him later this year. I would ask it to be the will of the House to join us in a warm house welcome.
Pleased to have the visitors with us today. The gentleman from James City County, Ms. Pogge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for an introduction.
Gentlewoman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Joining us in the gallery today is a young man by the name of Aidan Coleman. Aidan is the author of My House Bill 335, the bill that would make the garter snake the Virginia state snake. Aidan, would you rise? He's here today to testify in the Senate for that bill, and I hope you'll give him a warm house welcome and wish him luck in the Senate. Thank you.
We generally don't introduce lobbyists to the group, but we wish you luck on your lobbying. Are there further motions or resolutions under Rule 39? If not, the clerk will call the calendar.
Calendar for the Virginia House of Delegates for today, Monday, February 22nd, 2016. Senate bills on 3rd reading, uncontested calendar. The 40 bills on page 1, beginning on page 1, on the Senate bills 3rd reading uncontested calendar block begin with Senate Bill 25, a bill to amend and reenact section of the code relating to general illumination lights on motorcycles. Report from the Committee on Transportation.
The gentleman from Virginia Beach, Mr. Villanueva.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 25 is identical to HB 10, Delegate Cole's bill that passed the House unanimously, which deals with general illumination of lights on motorcycles. What this bill does is increases the number of lights from 4 to 5. I move that the bill pass.
Thank you.
Turning to page 2 of the printed calendar. Page 2, Senate Bill 38, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the code relating to the Department of General Services, disposition of surplus materials, animals trained for police work. Report from the Committee on General Laws with a substitute. Mr. Speaker, there also is a technical floor amendment.
The gentleman from Shenandoah, Mr. Gilbert.
Mr. Speaker, I move the substitute.
Questions on adoption of the committee substitute. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to. The gentleman from Shenandoah.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not aware of the technical floor amendment.
Clerk will report a floor amendment.
Floor amendment offered by Delegate Moorfield to the amendment just adopted. Line 39, substitute after the word agency on line 39, strike the word of and insert or.
I'd say that's a catch.
I move the adoption of the amendment.
Questions on adoption of the floor amendment offered by the gentleman from Tazewell, Mr. Moorfield. As many as favor that motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The floor amendment is agreed to. Gentleman from Shenandoah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, this is identical to Delegate Moorfield's House Bill 1238, which passed the House 99-0 regarding allowing the handler of an animal to purchase the animal after completing their police career. I move the bill pass.
Continuing with the block, Senate Bill 91, a bill to amend and reenact 2 sections of the code relating to license plates for emergency vehicles. Report for the Committee on Transportation.
The gentleman from Virginia Beach, Mr. Villanueva.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 91, Senator Morrison's bill, is identical to House Bill 374, Delegate Yancey's bill, that passed the House 98-0. This bill requires upon application issuance of permanent license plates for emergency medical services vehicles. I move that the bill pass.
Senate Bill 107, a bill to designate the Route 301 bridge in Prince George County, the Trooper Nathan Michael W. Smith Memorial Bridge. Report for the Committee on Transportation.
Gentlewoman from Petersburg, Ms. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and members of the House, Senate Bill 107 is the companion for my bill, House Bill 184, which is legislation that designates the Route 301 bridge in Prince George County at exit 45 over Interstate 95 as the Trooper Nathan Michael W. Smith Memorial Bill. Mr. Speaker, I hope it will be the pleasure of the House to pass the bill.
Senate Bill 150, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the code relating to the Virginia Public Procurement Act, procurement of information technology goods and services, contractor liability. Report for the Committee on General Laws.
Gentleman from Virginia Beach, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 150 is a companion bill to House Bill 930. It's the bill that allows more flexibility on the limited liability clause in government contracts. And it was the pleasure of this body to pass the bill.
Senate Bill 163, a bill to amend the Code of Virginia relating to local regulation driving in flooded areas, no wake. Report for the Committee on Transportation with a substitute.
The gentleman from Coaston, Mr. Helsel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 163 is identical to my House Bill 289, which voted out of this body 99-0. I would move that we pass the bill.
Questions on adoption of the committee substitute, as may favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 169, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to the Virginia Public Procurement Act, request for proposals for architectural or engineering services. Report for the Committee on General Laws with an amendment.
The gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Albo.
Mr. Speaker, I just learned that we need to do an amendment on this. Could this go by for the day, please?
Without objection, Senate Bill 169 by for the day.
Turning to page 4 of the printed calendar, Senate Bill 176, a bill to amend and reenact several sections of the code relating to consent to organ donation. Report from the Committee on Transportation.
The gentleman from Virginia Beach, Mr. Villanueva.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 176 is identical to House Bill 653, Delegate O'Bannon's bill that passed the House 99-0 and deals with consent to organ donation. What it does is eliminates the requirement that a person indicate his willingness to make an anatomical gift every time he renews or replaces his license. I move that the bill pass.
Continuing with the block, Senate Bill 192, a bill to amend and reenact 3 sections of the Code of Virginia relating to notices relating to certain insurance policies. Emergency. Report for the Committee on Commerce and Labor.
The gentleman from Scott, Mr. Kilgore.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 192 is the same as House Bill 31 dealing with the mailing of insurance policies and the notices. Hope it be the pleasure of the House to pass the bill.
Senate Bill 193, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the code relating to unfair claim settlement practices, appraisal of automobile repair costs. Report for the Committee on Commerce and Labor.
Close enough.
Gentleman Scott, Mr. Kilgore.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 193 is the same as House Bill 870, Delegate Hugo's bill. It deals with allowing appraisers to use photographs and things of that nature, videos to give appraisals. Hope it be the pleasure of the House to pass the bill.
Senate Bill 201, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the code relating to the division of fees among physicians. Report from the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
The gentleman from Carolina, Mr. Orrock.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 201 is a duplicate of House Bill 239 from Delegate O'Bannon, simply clarifying the rules relating to division of fees among physicians. Hope it be the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Senate Bill 212 has been taken by for the day. Next up in the block, Senate Bill 225, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the code relating to Autism Advisory Council, sunset. Report for the Committee on Rules.
The gentleman from Augusta, Mr. Landis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 225 simply extends from July 1, 2016 to July 1, 2018 the sunset or expiration of the Autism Advisory Council. Mr. Speaker, I move the bill pass.
Continuing with the block on page 6 of the printed calendar, Senate Bill 229, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to the purchase of flags of the United States of America and the Commonwealth of Virginia by public bodies. Report for the Committee on General Laws with an amendment.
The gentleman from Shenandoah, Mr. Gilbert.
Mr. Speaker, I move the committee amendment.
Questions on adoption of the committee amendment. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The committee amendment is agreed to. The gentleman from Shenandoah.
Mr. Speaker, this bill provides that whenever a state or local body or school division purchases a flag of the United States, that flag be made in the USA. It is identical now to Delegate Edmonds' Bill 1299, which passed the House 98-0. I move the bill pass.
House Bill 233, a bill to amend the Code of Virginia relating to the recognition of emergency medical services personnel licensure interstate compact. Report from the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
The gentleman from Carolina, Mr. Rock.
Mr. Speaker, Senate Bill 233 is identical to House Bill 222, Delegate Stolley. This is the enabling legislation to allow Virginia to participate in an EMS compact. Hope it the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Next up, Senate Bill 249, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to financial exploitation of adults. Report for the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institution with amendments.
The gentleman from Carolina, Mr. Rock.
Mr. Speaker, I move the committee amendments.
Questions on adoption of the committee amendments. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The committee amendments agreed to. The gentleman from Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, Senate Bill 249 is identical to House Bill 248, Delegate Minshew, that passed 99-0. This simply makes clear that when financial exploitation reaches a certain dollar threshold, state or local law enforcement must be informed. Hope it the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Senate Bill 264, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to nurse practitioners practicing outside of a patient care team. Report from the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions with an amendment.
The gentleman from Carolina, Mr. Orrock.
Mr. Speaker, I move the adoption of the committee amendment.
Questions on adoption of the committee amendment. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is agreed to. The gentleman from Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, this bill is now identical to House Bill 581 and simply makes clear that when a nurse practitioner loses the affiliation with her collaborating physician through no fault of her own, there'll be an initial 60-day grace period when they continue to practice while trying to find another physician and potential for an additional extension. Hope with the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Senate Bill 265, a bill to amend various other sections of the code and repeal another relating to multi-state licensure for nurses, nurse licensure compact. For the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
The gentleman from Carolina, Mr. Orrock.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 265 simply has the nurse compact language in our code to be reflective of changes that the National Compact Organization has implemented. These changes have already been incorporated in Virginia's nurse licensure requirements, so it's no change on nurses in their practice. Hope it be the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Thank you.
Turn to page 8 of the printed calendar, continuing Senate bills on third reading, uncontested block. Senate Bill 286, a bill to amend and reenact two sections of the Code of Virginia relating to motor vehicles equipped with televisions and video not within view of driver, license plates on vehicles owned by the Commonwealth. Report for the Committee on Transportation with a substitute.
The gentleman from Virginia Beach, Mr. Villanueva.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I move the substitute.
Questions on adoption of the committee substitute. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Substitute is agreed to. Gentleman from Virginia Beach.
Mr. Speaker, Senate Bill 286, Senator DeSteff's bill, is now identical to House Bill 454, Delegate Davis's bill. The bill allows for the viewing of visual displays as currently allowed while the vehicle is being operated autonomously. The bill also provides that the vehicles used by universities for vehicle technology research are now not required to have government plates. I move that the bill pass.
Senate Bill 299, a bill to amend and reenact another section of the Code of Virginia relating to flashing amber lights on public transit buses. Report for the Committee on Transportation with an amendment.
The gentleman from Virginia Beach, Mr. Villanueva.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I move the amendment.
Questions on adoption of the committee amendment? As many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion is agreed to. The gentleman from Virginia Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 299 is now identical to my House Bill 329 that allows for publicly owned or operated transit buses to use flashing amber lights. I move that the bill pass.
Senate Bill 328, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to nurse aid education programs. Report for the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
The gentleman from Carolina, Mr. Orrock.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, this bill is identical to House Bill 386, Delegate Minshew, and simply puts in a requirement that nurse aid training has to include observational and reporting technique instruction as well. Hope it the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Turning to page 9 of the printed calendar, Senate Bill 346, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to Family and Children's Trust Fund taxation. Report for the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
The gentleman from Carolina, Mr. Orrock.
Mr. Speaker, this measure is identical to Delegate Peace's House Bill 1207 and simply clarifies that the Family and Children's Trust Fund is a tax-exempt entity for purposes of Virginia taxation. Hope it the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Senate Bill 351, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to the Treasury Board meetings. Report to the Committee on General Laws.
The gentleman from Shenandoah, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, this is identical to Delegate Carr's House Bill 529, which passed the House 98-0. It reduces the number of meetings of the Treasury Board and eliminates compensation for board members. I move that the bill pass.
Senate Bill 362, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to the Virginia Public Procurement Act, small purchase procedures, transportation-related construction. Report to the Committee on General Laws with a substitute.
The gentleman from Tazewell, Mr. Moorfield.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the substitute.
Questions on adoption of the committee substitute? As many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The committee amendment substitute is agreed to. Gentleman from Tazewell.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, Senate Bill 362 is identical to my House Bill 1166, which would provide that public bodies not require competitive bids for transportation projects as long as the aggregate does not exceed $25,000. I move to pass the bill.
Turn to page 10 of the printed calendar, Senate Bill 437, a bill to amend and reenact section of the Code of Virginia relating to military medical personnel pilot programs. Report for the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
The gentleman from Carolina, Mr. Orrock.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 437 is identical to House Bill 825 by Delegate Stolley, simply putting in place where the department can create a pilot program within the Department of Veteran Services and the medical community to take full advantage of the medical training many of our military personnel had previously, and we can benefit from them here in the Commonwealth. It will be the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Senate Bill 448, a bill to designate the Interstate 66 Bridge in Warren County the Trooper Harry Lee Henderson Memorial Bridge. Report from the Committee on Transportation.
The gentleman from Virginia Beach, Mr. Villanueva.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 448 designates Trooper Harry Lee Henderson Memorial Bridge on Interstate 66 in Warren County. I move that the bill pass.
Continuing with the Senate Bill's third reading uncontested block, Senate Bill 453, a bill to amend and reenact several sections of the Code of Virginia and repeal one other relating to the Virginia Board for Asbestos, Lead, and Home Inspections, licensing of home inspectors. Reported from the Committee on General Laws.
The gentleman from Shenandoah, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, this is identical to Delegate Miller's House Bill 741, which passed the House 99-0, requiring the licensing of home inspectors, and I move the bill pass.
Turning to page 11 of the printed calendar, Senate Bill 455, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to the Department of Social Services, providing access to the Department of Medical Assistance Services and certain other entities to public assistance information. Report from the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
The gentleman from Carolina, Mr. Orrock.
Mr. Speaker, ladies of the House, Senate Bill 455 puts in place a mechanism where social services and DMAS can share information more effectively, thereby reducing the potential for fraud and also ensuring proper eligibility for the clients. Hope it's the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Senate Bill 465, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to requests for proposals for design-build projects. Report from the Committee on Transportation.
The gentleman from Virginia Beach, Mr. Villanueva.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 465 is similar to my House Bill 501 that passed the House unanimously. The bill allows for the submission and consideration of alternative technical concepts during the request for proposal process of a design-build transportation project. I move that the bill pass.
Senate Bill 480, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the code relating to the Drug Control Act, Schedule 1 drugs, addition of substances. Report for the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
The gentleman from Carolina, Mr. Orrock.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, this bill is identical to House Bill 1077, Delegate Garrett, and simply is our annual updating of our Schedule 1 drug list to conform with the Federal Drug Control Act as new drugs come onto the marketplace. Hope it's the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Turning to page 12 of today's printed calendar, Senate Bill 513, a bill to amend and reenact two sections of the Code of Virginia relating to prescription monitoring program, requirement of prescribers of opioids. Reporting for the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
Sorry. Gentleman from Carolina, Mr. Orrock.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, this measure is identical to Delegate Herring's House Bill 293. The primary difference is right now opiates that are being prescribed for more than 90 days, there has to be a checking of the prescription monitoring program database. This will now put in place whether that 14 days have been prescribed, there must be a checking so that we get a better handle on potential drug abuse and addiction. Hope it's the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Continuing with the block, Senate Bill 569, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the code relating to alcoholic beverage control, distribution of liter tax on cider produced by farm wineries. Report for the Committee on General Laws.
The gentleman from Lynchburg, Mr. Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Senate Bill 569 is identical to my House Bill 654 that was passed unanimously by this body on February the 1st. The Wine Promotion Fund is used for marketing, education, and research for both winemaking and cider making. It's been determined that the markup on the Virginia cider produced by our farm winery licensees is not being deposited into the fund. Senate Bill 569 clarifies that, in fact, the cider markup shall be reinvested in the Wine Promotion Fund. Mr. Speaker, I move that Senate Bill 569 do pass. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senate Bill 600 has been
Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Manassas, Mr. Miller.
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion regarding Senate Bill 600.
It went by for the day.
I know. I'd have a motion that we reconsider it and put it back on the uncontested docket. I think when the person who pulled it up, I think the person that pulled it out, I think their question has been answered since then, and I've moved to put it back onto the uncontested calendar.
It's been pulled from the computer. It would take a little bit of effort to recreate it. We can just do it tomorrow, can't we?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I hadn't pulled that. Put the others. Actually, I'm good.
Oh, he says he's good now.
I moved to reconsider.
He saw that bad look you gave him. The gentleman from Manassas, Mr. Miller, moves that having voted on the prevailing side by which we passed by Senate Bill 600, we reconsider that vote. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. That motion is agreed to. You want to take it up now? Gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
Mr. Speaker, I'll do SB 600. SB 600 is the bill deals with the Virginia Commission on the Intergovernmental Cooperation, the appointment process for this commission. It changes the Senate appointment approval to the chair of the Committee on Rules. I move the bill pass.
Thank you.
Continuing with the block, Senate Bill 621. A bill to amend and reenact section of the code relating to the Structured Settlement Protection Act. Report the Committee on Commerce and Labor with amendments.
The gentleman from Scott, Mr. Kilgore.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we adopt the committee amendments.
Questions on adoption of the committee amendments, as many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. The amendments agreed to. The gentleman from Scott, Mr. Kilgore.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, with the committee amendments, Senate Bill 621 is identical now to House Bill 52, dealing with the structured settlements that this House passed unanimously. Hope it be the pleasure of the House to pass the bill.
Senate Bill 631, a bill to amend and reenact various sections of the Code of Virginia, repeal several others, all relating to workers' compensation, fees for medical and legal services, emergency. Report from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with amendments.
The gentleman from Scott, Mr. Kilgore.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we adopt the committee amendments.
Questions on adoption of the committee amendment? As many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The amendments agreed to. The gentleman from Scott.
Mr. Speaker, now with the amendments, Senate Bill 631 is identical to the gentleman from Henrico, Delegate Farrell's Bill 378 that he worked so hard on over the summer, and it passed unanimous by the House. It will be the pleasure of the House to pass the bill.
Continuing with the block on page 14 of the printed calendar, Senate Bill 634, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to the Secure Commonwealth Panel membership reporting. Report for the Committee on General Laws.
The gentleman from Shenandoah, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, this bill is identical to Delegate Lindsey's House Bill 387, which passed the House 98-0. It adds a Secretary of Veterans and Defense Affairs to the Secure Commonwealth Panel and changes from quarterly to annual the panel's report to the governor. I move that the bill pass.
Senate Bill 658, a bill to amend and reenact two sections of the Code of Virginia relating to exemptions from registration, technical changes. Report from the Committee on Transportation.
The gentleman from Virginia Beach, Mr. Villanueva.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 658 is a technical bill that deals with registration exemptions. It clarifies that a person with a registration exemption is not required to obtain a registration certificate, license plates, or decals, and makes the corresponding grammatical clarifications throughout the statute. I move that the bill pass.
Senate Bill 666, a bill to amend and reenact two sections of the code relating to special and personalized license plates issuance to sex offenders. Report for the Committee on Transportation.
The gentleman from Loudon, Mr. Grease. That must have killed Senator Black.
Yeah, I made what? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why don't we talk about it like this? It's identical to House Bill 1190, and we'll just refer as that. Mr. Speaker, this bill prohibits the Department of Motor Vehicles from issuing to registered sex offenders special license plates and personalized license plate that refer to children or children programs. The identical bill in the House passed 99-0. I move that we pass the bill.
You know, if you turn 99 upside down, it's 66.
Yes.
Continuing with page 15 of the printed calendar, Senate Bill 727, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, public access to non-criminal records. Report from the Committee on General Laws.
The gentleman from Shenandoah, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, this is identical to Delegate Fowler's House Bill 1318, which passed the House 99-0, clarifying public access to non-criminal records maintained by public bodies engaged in criminal law enforcement activities. I move that the bill pass.
And the final bill in the third reading uncontested block, Senate Bill 774, a bill to direct the Department of Medical Assistance Services to issue a request for proposal for statewide non-emergency medical transportation services. Report for the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
The gentleman from Caroline, Mr. Orrock.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 774 is a Section 1 bill. The current DMAS non-emergency transport contracts will expire in the fall of 2017. This directs DMAS to enter into an RFP so that we'll have information for new contracts by July of 2017. Hope it be the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Shall the bills pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 100, no 0.
Ayes 100, no 0. The bills are passed.
Continuing with today's calendar, Senate bills on third reading regular calendar. Senate bills third reading regular. Page 15 of the printed calendar. First up, Senate Bill 300. And 36, a bill to amend and reenact multiple sections of the Code of Virginia relating to the Board of Education high school graduation requirements. Report of the Committee on Education with an amendment. And Mr. Speaker, there also is a floor amendment.
The gentleman from Loudoun, Mr. Greason.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, this is what's been referred to as the high school redesign bill. It's very similar to House Bill 895. And Mr. Speaker, to make it even more similar, I'd move the committee amendment.
The questions on adoption of the committee amendment, as many as favor that motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The committee amendment is agreed to. The gentleman from Loudoun.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, there are two floor amendments. One that I submitted that would actually correct, I think, an error in the bill, and I'd like the clerk to report a floor amendment, if that's okay.
The clerk will report a floor amendment.
Mr. Speaker, there are two floor amendments. I apologize. Two from Delegate Greason and another from Delegate Lemunyan. The first amendment's offered by Delegate Greason to the committee amendments just adopted on amendment number 1 on line 385. Line 385, after the word establish, strike, and require students to follow in the later years of high school alternative and insert multiple. Amendment number 2 on the next line, line 386, after the word readiness, strike the word that and insert the phrase for students to follow in the later years of high school, each such pathway shall.
The gentleman from Loudoun.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The two floor amendments that the clerk just reported make the text read like this. The Board of Education shall establish multiple paths towards college and career readiness and require that's what was struck. For students to follow in the later years of high school, each such pathway shall include opportunities for interns, externships, and apprenticeships. Mr. Speaker, I think this corrects a problem with the bill, and I would ask that the bill be passed.
Questions on adoption of the floor amendments?
Yes.
The gentleman from Loudoun, Mr. Greason. As many as favor that motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Those floor amendments agreed to. Clerk will report another floor amendment.
Floor amendment offered by Delegate Lemunyan to the committee adopted amendments. One amendment, insert at the very end of the bill, number 4, that notwithstanding the provisions of the second enactment of this act, the graduation requirements established by the Board of Education pursuant to this act shall only take effect with the prior statutory approval of the General Assembly.
The gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Lemunyan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, if this amendment sounds familiar, it is. This was the amendment that I offered to House Bill 895, the House Companion Bill. It was not agreed to on a fairly close vote, and several members had indicated an interest in reconsidering this in the context of Senate Bill 336. The effect of the amendment, and it is an enactment clause, is to say that after the report comes to us in September of 2017, that the State Board cannot go forward with changing graduation requirements unless there's a separate enactment of the General Assembly. Otherwise, it does not change the bill in any way. I hope it be the pleasure of the body to adopt the floor amendment.
Gentleman from Loudoun, Mr. Greason.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've asked the body to reject this amendment now before, but upon further consideration, it doesn't hurt to have belts and suspenders, and having the report come back to the body in September of 17, and then having each of us the ability to look at what those requirements are and vote positively or negatively on them is a good thing. So I would ask the body to consider Delegate Lemunyan's amendment and adopt his floor substitute. Thank you. His floor amendment, excuse me. Thank you.
The questions on adoption of the floor amendment offered by the gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Lemunyan. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Floor amendment's agreed to.
And Mr. Speaker, I'd ask that the bill pass.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 99, noes 1.
Ayes 99, noes 1. The bill is passed.
Continuing with Senate bills on third reading regular, page 16 of the printed calendar. Next up, Senate Bill 21, a bill to require the Department of Environmental Quality to receive approval from the General Assembly for a state plan to regulate carbon dioxide emissions from existing stationary sources prior to submitting the state plan to the United States Environmental Protection Agency for approval. Report for the Committee on Commerce and Labor.
The gentleman from Washington, Mr. O'Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 21 is the companion of House Bill 2 that I had that directs the State Corporation Commission and Department of Environmental Quality to come up with the Virginia version of the state implementation plan prior to submission to the EPA under the Clean Power Plan. I move the bill pass.
Shall the bill pass? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 64, noes 34.
Ayes 64, noes 34. The bill is passed.
Senate Bill 85, a bill to amend and reenact two sections of the Code of Virginia relating to the regulation of water and sewer utilities. Report for the Committee, Commerce and Labor.
The gentleman from Scott, Mr. Kilgore.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 85 is identical to House Bill 611 carried by the gentleman from Albemarle. It passed this House unanimous, dealing with when you give water and sewer companies, when you give notice to the consumers that a bill is going to go up and things of that nature. It will be the pleasure to have to pass a bill.
Shall the bill pass? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 99, noes 0.
Ayes 99, noes 0. The bill is passed.
Senate Bill 136, a bill to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia relating to the State Corporation Commission approval of electrical transmission lines. Hearing. Reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor.
The gentleman from Scott, Mr. Kilgore.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 136 is identical to House Bill 283. It allows the locality to request a hearing by the State Corporation Commission in that locality, and hope it the pleasure of the House to pass that bill.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 98, noes 0.
Ayes 98, noes 0. The bill is passed.
Turning to page 17 of the printed calendar today, Senate Bill 209, a bill to amend and reenact section of the Code of Virginia relating to the State Corporation Commission, insurance assessments, emissions, application for correction. Report of the Committee on Commerce and Labor.
The gentleman from Scott, Mr. Kilgore.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 209 is a Bureau of Insurance bill from the State Corporation Commission. It allows the Bureau of Insurance to recover omitted assessments pertaining to its regulation of insurance for the most recent 3 years. Hope it the pleasure of the House to pass the bill.
Shall the bill pass? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 98, noes 0.
Ayes 98, noes 0. The bill is passed.
Senate Bill 494, a bill to amend and reenact several sections of the Code of Virginia relating to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, record exclusions, rule of redaction, no weight accorded to public bodies' determination. Report from the Committee on General Laws.
The gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. LeBunion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 494 is identical to House Bill 817, which passed this body 99-0 on February 15th. This is the Freedom of Information Act redaction bill that we discussed when the House bill passed. It corrects the problem that we have with exempting redacted information. If a citizen of the Commonwealth wants a document that has exempt information, the exempt information must be redacted according to the bill, and the remainder of the document provided to the citizen. I hope it be the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 98, noes 2.
Ayes 98, noes 2. The bill fails to pass. He's still on probation, isn't he? Takes 100%. The bill is passed.
Continuing with the calendar, Senate Bill 536, a bill to amend and reenact section of the Code of Virginia relating to alcoholic beverage control, spirits tastings by distiller licensee. Report from Committee on General Laws.
The gentleman from Culpeper, Mr. Freitas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 536 is identical to House Bill 1350, which passed out of the House 92-6. It increases the maximum daily spirits that can be offered at tastings from 2 ounces to 3. I hope it will be the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 91, noes 7.
Ayes 91, noes 7. The bill is passed.
Turning to page 18 of the printed calendar, Senate bills on third reading regular. Senate Bill 646, a bill to amend the Code of Virginia relating to the Fantasy Contests Act. Registration required, conditions of registration, civil penalty. Report to the Committee on General Laws with a substitute.
The gentleman from Manassas, Mr. Miller.
Mr. Speaker, I move that committee substitute.
Questions on adoption of the committee substitute. As many favor that motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Substitutes agreed to. The gentleman from Manassas.
Mr. Speaker, this bill is now, with that Senate substitute, identical to House Bill 775, which creates a regulatory framework and consumer protections around fantasy sports contests, which are completely unregulated now. I move that the Senate bill be passed.
Shall the bill pass?
He's a regulator.
Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 80, noes 20.
Ayes 80, noes 20. The bill is passed.
Continuing, page 18, Senate Bill 736, a bill to address local ordinances concerning the installation or use of landscape cover materials until regulations have been approved as part of the statewide fire prevention code. Report from the Committee on General Laws.
The gentleman from Rockingham, Mr. Wilt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, this is what has come to be known as the mulch bill. And I would remind everyone that it is a Section 1 bill, so every vote is very important. Mr. Speaker, a couple other points to draw everyone's attention to the printed calendar, the last sentence, until regulations have been approved. Mr. Speaker, that is a portion that through our legislative process, we omitted that. We took that out. So in essence, the ordinance can be in effect for new construction going forward. The concern for everyone was the fact that it was very questionable whether it was even allowed that the city could retrofit, and I don't believe they can, Mr. Speaker, to go backwards in the code, the fire code or the building code. And what the bill does, it conveys that the city of Harrisonburg may not retroactively create an ordinance that regulates landscaping cover materials. Mr. Speaker, this bill, it is identical to my House Bill 944, which passed this body 92-5. It passed the Senate 39-0. And Mr. Speaker, I believe the reason for that overwhelming support is the realization from all of us of the potential that it has down the road for all of our locations if they would choose to go in this direction. And Mr. Speaker, I would remind everyone the huge support that we had from many, many groups. Move the bill pass.
The gentleman from Pocosin, Mr. Helsel.
Mr. Speaker, speak to the bill.
Gentleman has
Thank
floor.
you. I really dislike lining up against my friend Delegate Wilt. Some new information for the body to know, and let me just tell you who does oppose this bill. The fire rescue and service people are opposed to it in the city of Harrisonburg. The mayor is opposed to it. The city council is opposed to it. The Association of Fire Chiefs are opposed to it. And I just got an email from the city manager who's also opposed to it. I think that in and of itself is enough to reject this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 85, noes 14.
Ayes 85, noes 14. The bill is passed.
Next up, Senate Bill 180, continuing with the calendar, House bills with Senate amendments. Page 18 of the printed calendar, House bills with Senate amendments. House Bill 186, a bill to amend and reenact various sections of the Code of Virginia relating to extending the expiration dates of port-related tax credits. The bill passed the House January 21st. It subsequently passed the Senate with amendments on the 18th of February.
The gentleman from Newport News, Mr. Yancey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, House Bill 186 passed unanimously. This bill was related to extending the port tax credit. The House passed it with 2020. The Senate amended the legislation to extend to 2022, and I would move that we adopt the Senate amendments.
The gentleman from Charlottesville, Mr. Toscano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman from Powhatan, the chair of the Finance Committee, please rise for a question?
Will the gentleman yield?
I yield.
Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I asked the gentleman, he already knows I'm going to ask him this question, but I wanted to ask him if, given that we're continuing to see these extension of tax credit bills, is there a philosophy or a policy that the Finance Committee is now regarding how long these extensions should go on?
I thank the gentleman. That's a good question. And of course, you're not seeing the extension of ones that we didn't agree to. So there are a few that don't show up here. But in general, the question that you ask about the extension of tax credits is one that our committee has taken a pretty dependable line on, spearheaded by Delegate Klein and Delegate Hugo, among others, and I know members of both sides. And the reason for putting a sunset on tax credits is to make sure that the advocates for them have to come back and ask again for permission, and we get a chance to say, are they doing what we hoped that they would do? Are they achieving the benefits in job creation or in enhancement of our employment in the Commonwealth?
Follow-up question, Mr. Speaker.
Will the gentleman yield?
I yield.
Gentleman yield.
Mr. Speaker, I asked the gentleman, this one extends it for 5 years. Is that kind of the general policy now, that you're generally extending these for 5 years if you're going to extend them at all?
In general, that is the case. We have generally put a 5-year limitation on it. The Senate has seen fit this year to put pretty much the same on the tax credits. There are a few exceptions. We're going to see one a little bit later on an arena in Virginia Beach that's a considerably longer extension. But in general, the 5 years is what we've done.
Thank the gentleman.
Shall the Senate amendment be agreed to? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 99, noes 1.
Ayes 99, noes 1. The Senate amendment is agreed to.
Continuing with today's calendar, page 19, resolutions uncontested calendar. Various bills in the block. First up, Senate Joint Resolution 27, designating the first full week in August in 2016 and in each succeeding year as International Assistance Dog Week in Virginia. Report from the Committee on Rules.
The gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. SJR 27 is International Assistant Dog Week. These assistant dogs help with veterans, people with disabilities, et cetera, so I hope it will be the pleasure of the House to pass the resolution.
Turning to page 20 of the printed calendar, continuing with the block, Senate Joint Resolution 48, designating September in 2016 and in each succeeding year as Blood Cancer Awareness Month in Virginia. Report from the Committee on Rules.
Gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
Mr. Speaker, there are about 9 of these in a row, and the title is really self-explanatory for all of them, so I will move the resolution pass.
Next up, Senate Joint Resolution 49, designating September 15th in 2016 and each succeeding year as Lymphoma Awareness Day in Virginia. Report from the Committee on Rules.
Gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
I move the resolution pass.
Next up, Senate Joint Resolution 61, designating June 29th in 2016 and each succeeding year as Virginia Constitution Day in Virginia. Report for the Committee on Rules.
The gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
I move the resolution pass.
Turning to page 21 of the printed calendar, continuing the resolution on contested block, Senate Joint Resolution 62, designating the first Friday in February in 2017 and in each succeeding year as Wear Red Day in Virginia. Report for the Committee on Rules.
Gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
Mr. Speaker, I move the resolution pass.
Next up, Senate Joint Resolution 101, designating Virginia as a Purple Heart State. Report from Committee on Rules.
Gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
Mr. Speaker, I move the resolution pass.
Next up, Senate Joint Resolution 102, designating August 7th in 2016 and in each succeeding year as Purple Heart Day in Virginia. Reported from the Committee on Rules.
Gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
Mr. Speaker, I move the resolution pass.
And completing the block, turning to page 22 of the printed calendar, Senate Joint Resolution 129, designating April 29th in 2016 and in each succeeding year as Public Transportation Safety Day in Virginia. Report from the Committee on Rules.
The gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
Mr. Speaker, I move the resolution pass.
Shall the resolutions be adopted? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 100, noes 0.
Ayes 100, no 0. The resolutions are agreed to.
Mr. Speaker, that completes today's calendar.
Does the clerk have any announcements or communications?
Looking at today's meeting schedule, maybe. The Appropriations Committee will be meeting today 1/2 hour after adjournment of the House up in the 9th floor Appropriations Room across the way in the General Assembly building. Courts of Justice today, that meeting has been canceled, full courts. However, Criminal Law Sub will meet 1/2 hour after adjournment downstairs in House Room C. And then across the hall, again, 1/2 hour after adjournment, Civil Law Sub of courts will meet in House Room D. Those are both 1/2 hour after adjournment. Later this afternoon, the Bioscience Caucus will meet at 3 o'clock in the 5th floor West Conference Room. This is a change in date for the meeting of the Bioscience Caucus. The Appropriations Higher Ed Subcommittee meeting, that's been canceled today. So next up would be 4 o'clock this afternoon, Transportation Subcommittee number 2. They will be meeting 4 o'clock in the 5th floor East Conference Room. Appropriations Transportation Subcommittee, that has been canceled. That subcommittee meeting is canceled. Similarly, Militia Police Public Safety Subcommittee number 3, that meeting's been canceled today. So next would be at 4:30 this afternoon, Agriculture, Chesapeake and Natural Resources Agriculture Subcommittee. They'll be meeting in 7 West at 4:30 across the way in the GAB. Also at 4:30, the Virginia Environment and Renewable Energy Caucus. They'll be meeting, but they'll be down in the 4th floor West Conference Room. Today's HWI Subcommittee number 1, that meeting has been canceled. Will not be meeting today, HWI Sub 1, and the Northern Virginia Delegation Caucus meeting today has been canceled. They will not be meeting. Looking ahead to tomorrow, Tuesday morning, February 23rd, bright and early, Sunrise Caucus at 6:30 a.m. in the 6th floor Speaker's Conference Room. Then at 7:30, the Education Committee's Education Innovation Subcommittee. They'll be meeting 7th floor West Conference Room at 7:30. Also at 7:30 tomorrow, the Privileges and Elections Committee's Elections Subcommittee. They will be meeting in the 9th floor Appropriations Room again at 7:30. Also at 7:30, the Conservative Caucus. They'll be meeting a floor down on the 8th floor West Conference Room. Then tomorrow morning at 8:30, Health, Welfare, and Institutions. They will be meeting 1st floor, House Room D, 8:30. However, the Transportation Committee meeting, they will not be meeting. That meeting has been canceled tomorrow. No transportation full committee. At 9 o'clock, however, HWI Subcommittee number 1, they will be meeting in House Room D. This is a change in time for HWI Subcommittee number 1. Then tomorrow at 10 o'clock, the Appropriations Elementary and Secondary Education Subcommittee. They'll be meeting at 10 up in the 9th floor Appropriations Room. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the Democratic Caucus will meet at 11:30 in House Room 2. Republican Caucus will meet at 11:30 in House Room 1. Both meetings are here downstairs in the Capitol. That completes the announcements I have at this time.
Gentleman, Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
Mr. Speaker, I move that when the House adjourn today, to adjourn to reconvene tomorrow at 12 noon.
The gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox, moves that when the House adjourn today, adjourn to reconvene tomorrow at 12 noon. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. That motion is agreed to. The gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House do now adjourn.
The gentleman from Colonial Heights, Mr. Cox, moves the House do now adjourn. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. That motion is agreed to. The House stands adjourned until 12 noon tomorrow.